Hello, welcome to another edition of Global Business. I am Imewore Ohiemokai. Now we are in Uyo. Remember that when Uyo some time ago, and we're back here for the National Pension Commission's Journalists Conference. Now you'll be asking me, what has a journalist conference got to do with business? Well, we decided to use this conference as an avenue to reach out to some specific people, especially as concerns pensions with the states and the federal government. Of course, you know that the pension scheme has been a troubled scheme since I can remember. So you have workers demonstrating, old people demonstrating that they have not been paid pensions for years. Then they came with the contributory pension scheme. The Obasanjo regime came with it in 2004, and we thought that will be Eureka for the pension scheme in Nigeria, but there has still been different agitations. There have been also troubles with the contributory pension scheme, which is the CPS, and even the old pension scheme. There has been a trouble in transition from the old pension scheme to the new pension scheme. Anyway, we'll be looking at some of the issues, some of the challenges that are hitting the contributory pension scheme for the federal government and also the states on this program today. You just want to sit back, relax, and learn. Especially if you are a micro, small, and medium enterprise, you need to learn. Especially, you should know that you need this scheme if you must be in business in Nigeria. Let's have the program now. Every 2 years, the National Pension Commission, PENCOM, gathers journalists who report their activities to school them on better understanding of the pension system. This year, they gathered them in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. Representative of the Acting Director General, Aisha Dahir Umar, sets the tone for this conference.
It was discovered by the Commission that the returns being generated by the PFAs on the balances of retirement savings accounts of majority of retirees could be used to enhance their monthly pensions. Consequently, the Commission sought for and obtained the approval of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation to implement the pension enhancements, which resulted in increased monthly pensions for most retirees receiving pensions under the program withdrawal arrangement.
The event was clearly a success for both media editors and reporters and the PENCOM team that attended. So we're still on to Global Business, and we're talking with the representative of the Acting Director General here. So we're going to be talking about state pensions. You know, we've been talking about the contributory pension scheme, and we're looking at the federal. But no one really concentrates on the states, and that's what we're going to be talking about today with Mohammed Sani, who is the legal advisor and the company secretary of the National Pension Commission, or we'll say PENCOM. Mohammed Sani is right here with me. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
This program. Now, tell us, what is the update? We know that since the contributory pension scheme started in 2004, there have been some updates in terms of states joining this, because the contributory pension scheme, which is CPS, actually is a federal thing, but states are supposed to join. How many states have joined, and what's the update basically about states remitting?
Thank you very much for this question. The states have a constitutional responsibility to provide pensions for their employees. If you look at Section 210 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, clearly the states are supposed to provide pensions through a law enacted by them. Now, what type of a system of pensions would they provide? In 2004, the federal government came up with the contributory pension scheme as a standard that we should adopt in this country to move away from the defined benefit, which for long has caused a lot of problems for us as a country. Now, with time, many states have agreed to commence to enact their laws in line with the constitutional requirement to, reform the pension laws to adopt the contributory pension scheme. And the National Pension Commission, what it did was to come up with a model state pension law. And we sent it across to all the states to say, look at this model, see how you can enact your laws to provide for contributory pension scheme. Because the beauty of contributory pension scheme is that it is such that there is sustainable, because payment of the pension is done on a monthly basis. So you don't have to wait until when a person retires, then the promise you have made to him you cannot pay, because we all know how the financial situation of the country is, both at the federal and state levels. So we advise the states to do that. And in 2014, we went further based on the provisions of Section 16 of the Constitution to say that because all the state is supposed to provide all age care and pension for all citizens, then states should also come on board. Now, we have encouraged states. At the moment, we have about 28 that already have enacted their own laws. And the others were at bill stage. They always submit the bills to us for vetting. We give them, all due technical advice. And we also have insisted that they should, in the enactments, establish their state pension bureaus that would now focus on putting the institutional structure so that states will find it easy to administratively implement their various laws. Now, we have issues to do with the payment of salary. That is a fundamental issue with these many states. But we also have encouraged them to look at the benefits that accrue with the implementation of the contributory pension scheme and do that for the benefit of both the state as an entity as well as their own employees going forward.
Now, the problem I find is that sometimes there is discrepancy between what pensioners will come out and say that is being owed them by state governors and what governors say. Some pensioners may come out and say, okay, a governor is owing us about 49 billion naira for 10 years. And the governor will say, no, I'm owing them only 16 billion naira for 2 years. Why is there this discrepancy in figures sometimes?
Well, I wouldn't know exactly, but I suppose it has to do with issues of that promise that I told you under the defined benefit scheme. There would be a promise, and then upon retirement, that promise is being expected to be fulfilled by the workers. Now, there could be arguments as to what exactly have I promised, and the pensioners would have a particular expectation, and then the states will look at what exactly they think they are owing. But this is one advantage with the contributory pension scheme. Now, if the state had implemented the contributory pension scheme, it will be clear that on a monthly basis, a pension is paid to the employer, and you are done with that liability forever. And for the employee, he would know exactly what is in his own account. And then you will also actually determine what is being owed for that employee from the time he joined the state up to the time you have transited into the contributory pension scheme. And it is going to be determined by actuaries that are professionals. Then there wouldn't have been any arguments, because the laws usually come with tables of what a person is supposed to be paid whenever he retires. That table would clearly show what is being owed to each individual pensioner. So I believe that really the going forward, I think state employees should insist that state governments join the contributory pension scheme. It will solve both the state problem and then that of the employees.
Just finally, just to be clear,
Yes.
all private companies that are registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission
Yes.
must engage with the PENCOM in terms of being part of the scheme, isn't it? The contributory pension scheme, isn't it? All private companies across the country. I just want to be clear, especially for people who are probably not in Abuja and outside Abuja or not in Lagos, and say, okay, do we need to be part of PENCOM? I mean,
Yes.
clarify that for us.
The Pension Reform Act 2014 clearly says that all employers in the private sector who have 3 employees and above should contribute for their employees. And so each corporate entity that has employed 3 people and above must register, and it is a legal obligation. So if a person, if PENCOM gets to know any employer that has that requirement and is not really meeting the legal requirement, definitely we will get to that person and ensure that he complies with the law. Of course, someone will tell me that the 2014 Act, there is some typo in the law where you have, it says 15 employees and above. But it is really a legislative anomaly, because we are coming from a time when the minimum under the 2004 Act is employers with 5 or more employees are supposed to come under the scheme. Now, you cannot, disenfranchise, the employees, to now remove them, to shrink the coverage, because it will be unconstitutional. It will go against the provisions of Section 16 that I told you about, that requires that all government institutions and all levels of people are operating within the country are supposed to provide all age care and pension for their employees. So the logical explanation is that all companies, registered companies, and when I say companies, it includes business names. Provided you are an employer and you have engaged employees 3 and above, then you come under the coverage of the contributory pension scheme.
So now you know it. Thank you very much, Mohammed Sani, for talking with us. Now you know if you are a small, micro, or even medium enterprise. Of course, if you are a medium enterprise, you have more than 3 staff. If you have 3 staff and above, you must register with PENCOM. The program continues. Got Aderonke Adedeji. She's the president of the Pension Operators of Nigeria, PENOP, they call themselves.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the Pension Operators of Nigeria.
Well, it's a self-regulated, non-for-profit organization made up of all the operators in the pension industry. So that includes pension fund administrators, pension fund custodians, and the closed pension fund administrators. So it's a body that works as a group and represents the interests of the association.
Okay, now as PENOP, we have a lot of issues with pension all across states. I don't want to just look at the federal. Do you operate within the states, and do you serve as a pressure group for state governments in trying to make sure that their pension scheme is regularized and well organized?
Yes. I believe that you will find in all the states of Nigeria that operators are represented. So in a lot of the states, all the pension fund administrators are there. From the state perspective, there's always been a working group with PENCOM to get the states on board in terms of the scheme. So we have from time to time made visits to the states, met state officials in trying to enlighten them and bring them up to speed in terms of the benefits of the scheme. So that is an ongoing process. We've had success in some states. As you're aware, there are some states that have come on board. So states are at various levels of compliance. It's an ongoing project, like I said, and we hope that over time we will continue to make progress.
Do you serve basically as a pressure group?
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yes, we do.
Now, we have so many issues, especially also concerning some agencies. Some agencies have asked that they should be paid 100%. Some agencies have said they don't want to belong to the contributory pension scheme. How do you marry all this? And what's your own idea of a perfect pension system in Nigeria?
Well, all the various requests and voices that we've heard over the years shouldn't really surprise us, because whenever there's a new scheme, you find that there are people with other interests and who have benefited from other schemes who may have ideas on how the scheme should run. The scheme has been around now for about 12 years. I believe it's proved itself, it's well established. It's done a full cycle several times. People are drawing regularly from the scheme. So I believe that, you know, over time we will see less and less of the agitation. A perfect pension scheme, as much as possible, should be one that will stand the test of time. It should be self-sustaining. It shouldn't be exposed to the vagaries of maybe politics or various things happening in the society. So you want one that will last over time. It will be transparent. It will pay benefits as and when due. It will provide adequate returns to all the beneficiaries. I believe very much that in Nigeria we're working towards that. We've come a long way, I believe, in the 12 years, and things can only get better.
China and Nigeria recently signed a 15 billion yuan or 720 billion naira currency swap agreement. This agreement to swap their currencies is without a third-party involvement. A currency swap is an arrangement between two friendly countries which have regular, substantial or increasing trade to basically involve in trading in their own local currencies, where both pay for import and export trade at the predetermined rates of exchange without bringing in the US dollar. The 15 billion yuan agreement is for 3 years and can be extended upon mutual consent. Some of the benefits are facilitation of bilateral trade and direct investments, safeguarding financial market stability in both countries, reduced risk of charges involved in multiple currency exchanges, minimization of the borrowing costs of both parties. It took 2 years after President Buhari visited China for this agreement to be consummated. On the downside, there may be a challenge in purchasing power parity and dumping of substandard goods, because with an agreement like this, there is the ever-present temptation to take advantage and shortchange or value proposition. So there is need for checks and balances to underwrite the win-win character of the agreement. Peter Agawa, welcome to Global Business. Now,
Thank you
tell
very
us
much.
about this pension enhancement scheme. I hear it's a new policy that has been introduced into the pension scheme in Nigeria.
Yes, thank you very much. It is an initiative of the National Pension Commission to enhance the monthly pension, right, of retirees. And this initiative came about when we looked at what the RSAs, RSAs now being retirement savings accounts, have kind of generated over the years. You are aware that contributions are deducted and remitted to pension fund administrators, and these pension fund administrators are responsible for managing these funds. And over time, the management of the funds results to returns on the investments made. And over the years, these returns have accumulated.
They could be called profits.
They could be called profits, if I use the layman language. Yes. And it has accumulated over time. And people have gone through the system and they have retired and they are now earning monthly pension. But because of the return on investment, which has accumulated over time, it is enough to enhance what they are taking as monthly pension. And so, after doing some analysis, the National Pension Commission came up with this initiative to see that monthly pensions can actually be enhanced. This pension enhancement is has to do with those that program withdrawal. The program withdrawal, of course, is handled by the pension fund administrators, and we know that the annuity is a product of the insurance. So this has been going on, and quite a number of retirees have benefited from this enhancement.
Now, let's talk about remittances. It's been a big challenge for many companies, especially private companies.
Yes.
And, I know state governments are on their own.
Yes.
We also have some, the federal governments probably have a few cases of failures, but specifically private companies, private businesses.
Yeah.
How are you handling the remittances, the failures in remittances by these private companies?
Yes, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge that also has been tackled headlong by the National Pension Commission. It is true that the remittances, there are different reasons why, especially since you have narrowed it down to the private sector, there are different reasons why some of those organizations are not remitting. So the first thing National Pension Commission does is they want to find out why are they not remitting. I mean, it could be as a result that the company has gone into extinction. It could be as a question of maybe liquidity issues. So definitely the why will determine on how, And we have a department, the Compliance and Enforcement Department, who is really responsible for really looking at this aspect of remittance. So we get the information from the pension fund administrators. You will remember that the pension fund administrators are the ones that are keeping the retirement savings account. So that is the first port of call. They know the accounts that are not getting the remittances. So an account that has been getting remittances in the last couple of months, then you notice that all of a sudden the remittances have stopped or they are not regular. So we get that information from the pension fund administrators. They let us know that these are the accounts where remittances have stopped flowing in, and then of course we also follow up to know from the employers why these remittances have stopped.
Sorry to cut you there.
Yes.
You mentioned that one of the issues that may result in non-remittance is the fact that there is liquidity issue.
Yes.
Now, are you coming up with an amnesty program, or do you have an amnesty program like the tax people, the FIRS came up with the VATES? Do you have an amnesty program for people who may have seriously and genuine cases of liquidity challenge on how to or remittances?
I won't call it an amnesty program. We don't have an amnesty program because this is by law. You know, as far as you are in business, you have employed people, you have made those deductions, you should remit. However, like you have rightly identified, because of whatever challenges these companies might be going through, we sit down with them to have a plan. So you've had liquidity issues. Now, how can you meet up with the outstanding liabilities in this regard?
No matter the length of time.
So, of course, it has to be a considerable length of time. Because remember, the objective is that the employee should get these funds. Now, if a company has had challenges, we would understand that. I mean, we know what's going on. But however, there must be a plan that the company will be committed to, you know, over time in ensuring that these liabilities are paid.
And this will wrap it up on Global Business today. It's been a good edition looking at the pension scheme in Nigeria. And of course, we have looked at the issues, the challenges, and possible solutions. And like Mrs. Adedeji said, the perfect pension scheme for the country is one devoid of politics, one devoid of all the vagaries of corruption and all that negatives that tend to want to clog a good scheme that could work for Nigerians. Well, we pray that and hope that the contributory pension scheme will work not only in the federal, but also in the private sector and the states. It's always nice doing business with you. Let's do business again next week. Imewore Uhiamokai. Have a great week.